All right, folks, Canadian real estate market under pressure once again. And yes, we have been talking about condos. We have been talking about that layer of pressure. However, there's that recreational layer, which is cottages, up north lifestyle, and the additional properties that people have bought in the periods of COVID, thinking that they will obviously make money, have a good time, and they will bank in the future. Well, everything is changing faster than you might think. We will get into that. I asked 5 questions, 5 very, very hard questions for people owning these recreational properties and owning cottages. How will this impact everyone else? How will this impact us here in the city in Toronto, GTA? Well, it is simple. All these recreational properties, all these properties that have been purchased for investments, have been borrowed most of the time against properties that are here, right here in the city via HELOC and line of credit. So let's get right into these questions. So I did ask 5 hard questions for these clients owning these recreational properties, and this is what I have got. So question number 1. Was this cottage your dream or someone else's idea of success? When I asked this question, the response took probably 30 seconds, right? And this is what I got. So the answer, honestly, it was marked as a Canadian dream. Everyone was buying and we felt like we'd missed out. But now I realized we were sold a lifestyle we never really had time for or income to maintain. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. So when that dream was sold, right, the Canadian dream, having a cottage up north and all of that stuff, like most people do not take into consideration the traveling time. I don't know if you have been on Highway 400 or any of these highway, airport road, just like heading up north, right? It is ridiculous. Please comment below if you were ever stuck in one of these highways. However, it is not as easy as you might think. So that cottage, that lifestyle becomes a burden because you need few hours to travel there. And then once you get there, you have to maintain that property. Most people don't understand. There's grass to be cut. There's stuff to be maintained, talking to your neighbors, whatever, right? So, and then coming back, right? So usually those weekends are shut off, right? Like people leave probably Friday evenings and come Sunday evenings, right? And it's getting much harder and harder. And that is creating that pressure, right? That pressure up north. And these people that have bought in the peak, oh my God, they're losing so much money. The market is paralyzed up north, right? Like I don't know if you've looked at cottages and stuff like that. At one point during that period of COVID, you couldn't find a property. And whatever you found was sold within that day, regardless of the condition, regardless of everything, right? So let's get into the second question. If the power went out for a week, could you actually live there, right? So most people did not really think about this stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like they go for a weekend or they go for a day or two and they don't think about that, right? So, but the answer was this: no, not at all. We'd be completely isolated. We don't have backup systems. Cell reception is very weak and the roads don't get plowed fast. Obviously, this is wintertime. This place isn't built for survival, just for show. So this is the answer that I got. So most people are realizing right now that, look, like I want the peace and I want all of that stuff, but I want the accommodation of everything else, right? So different times or different situations create other different situations and obviously prices, right? So people thought, look, like I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna sit in a forest surrounded by beautiful trees and I'm gonna be fine. Well, not really. Like maybe at one point you could have worked from there, right? Maybe you didn't have a power outage, but living like in the 1800s, like it's not that easy. People think like, look, like I can do it, but can you really do it? Can you really deal with black flies? Can you really deal with lack of water supply or electricity and walking around with a candle and stuff like that? So those are all the things that people do not take into consideration. And when they pull that trigger, they just pull it because of FOMO most of the time. So was this your dream or somebody else's? All right, let's get into number 3. If a buyer offered you your exact purchase price right now, would you take it? All right, so this is a good one. In a heartbeat. They would have sold that property in a heartbeat. But no one's offering that. The listings are sitting. And even if I break even, I'll be losing years of maintenance, interest, and the emotional cost of keeping the place alive, right? So yes, people want out. Let's be clear. So why do they want out? Probably it's the cost, right? Like they need that extra cash flow to maintain that recreational, the luxury, whatever they think that is, but they need that upkeep. So if you're drying up, right, and if you're in like almost losing your job maybe, and the uncertainty, security, you have to renew your mortgage, there's still a million people that need to renew that, right? So when people are starting to putting that on a piece of paper and they see the lack of that particular fund, like trust me, they don't want that cottage, like they want out, right? It's just like the math and the situation, unfortunately, not allowing them to exit how they would like. All right, let's get into number 4. Have you ever thought about who this cottage actually serves, your family or your ego? So when I ask that, every time you have that ego question, right? Like, who does it serve really, right? Like, is this really serving you and your family, or is it serving your ego because of your neighbor, because of a family member? Maybe someone, 50 years ago was wealthy and they had a cottage and they were bragging about that. Maybe your grandfather, your grandmother, your neighbor, and then you wanted the same thing. But things were different back then, right? So but let's get into the answer here. So that one hurts. They even told me like, oh my gosh, this question hurts, right? I thought it was for the kids, but they're never here. They work weekends. It sits empty and it's not used. I think deep down, it was more for the status to prove we made it. All right, so now we get into something else, right? Like, people think like, look, I'm gonna buy it for my kids, right? Like let me give something to my kids. Let them run around a field, which is nice. It's great. But they take these kids to these cottages and they sit on an iPad, right, in a bedroom, and they don't like it because it's probably smells like mold, and if it's not, like top of the line cottage, $1 million or $2 million cottage, right? Like some of these shacks, like I believe, like I know back in the day, cottages were cottages, right? It used to be like a shed or a little bit bigger than a shed, and you go there just to vent, right? To go around through the forest, to get bitten by all these mosquitoes, to jump in a cold lake. That's what you want, right? Like you want to feel that. So today, people are buying these cottages, and they're making them, or they're trying to make them better than what they have in the city. So what I mean by that? I mean, like, they're bringing all the technology, they're bringing all the Netflixes, they're bringing all the iPads, they're bringing all 4 TVs and all of that stuff. What is the point? What's the point of that? Now, when the kids get a little bit older, don't forget, they have their own life and their own obligations, school, work, weekends, as they have mentioned, right? People work, right? So what happens? That becomes a burden. So the parents or that person that bought it has to maintain it, has to pay for it, has to go back and forth, and it's useless. It's just a dead weight for now. Anyways, number 5, if you needed to sell within 30 days, what would you do? So this is a loaded question. So when I asked, like you have a 30-day gap, what would happen? And they got paralyzed because they know nothing is moving. But what if You had no choice. You have to, right? So the answer, panic. We'd probably take a loss or have to sell to a flipper. There's no liquidity in this market anymore, especially with interest rates, insurance this high. You're stuck unless you slash the price and you move on and stuff like that. So these are some of the things that people they're stuck, like up north, like everybody seems to be stuck, and even the locals that live in some of these smaller towns or counties, communities, or whatever, right? They were born there. Like even they say, like I cannot even buy these cottages here because the prices are ludicrous. We work in these small shops, like fishing stores. They sell some of the stuff for us tourists, because when we come from the city, you're a tourist, right? Doesn't matter, like, you know what I mean? So they work in these small coffee shops or whatever, but they don't get paid much. So they cannot even afford their own market, and they're born there, right? Because the prices were pumped from the city. And then the people in the city cannot even afford that second property or that cottage. And then the third is nobody is using it, right? Like, have you ever driven some of these lakes? They're for sale signs. There's more for sale signs than trees. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's just crazy, right? So I don't know, people, and I got that question. So why didn't the prices really go down that much? Well, look, they did, right? Like they went down by 20%, 30% in some areas and whatnot. But people don't want to give in because psychologically, right? Like they don't want to lose everything right away. Like it hurts, right? So they're bleeding slowly. All right, let's go this year. Next year, it will be fixed. It will not be fixed because there are so many layers to this upcoming crash, recession, whatever you want to call it. So many layers, right? And everything seems to be boxed in and angled in. Wherever you go, you're kind of stuck. If you're knowing that, if you're mortgage free or very low and stuff like that, then you could probably ride it out. And you were probably of that, 1% or a few percent of people that did not jump on this wagon. They did not. They were like, and they were probably laughed at. They're like, oh my gosh, why wouldn't you invest? Like I just bought it, and in 1 year I made 100,000, I made 50,000, I made 300,000. But most people don't understand. And and I got this the other day from a subscriber on the channel. He actually commented in one of the videos, and he said, look, back in the day, the banks would live off our savings. Think about this for a second. They would live from our savings. So people that have savings, they deposit it in the bank, then the bank uses that money, right? And obviously interest and all of that stuff, and that's how a bank gets stronger, economy, etc. So now it flipped, right? So what happens right now, if you have savings and the bank doesn't care about that much, right? And they're giving you peanuts for it anyways. So what they care about, they live off of your debt. So if you're $500,000, you're okay, right? But if you have $3 million in debt, you're even better. You see what I'm saying? So that's how they make their money now. They don't make their money from your savings account. They make the money from your debt ratio, right? And obviously it is sad for so many people, but it is what it is. Sometimes the choice is yours, whether you're gonna bleed in a second or you're gonna bleed slowly and see what's gonna happen. Sometimes bleeding slowly can lead to more damages because there are different layers associated. So I hope you got some value out of this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.